Hello, this is State Senator Rob Sampson, and I am coming to you from my kitchen table in Wolcott, Connecticut. I want to start by saying that as long as I have been in office, I have made and kept the same promise, which is that I will never vote for anything that would increase the taxes each of us pay to the state of Connecticut. And that's since I believe we are taxed too much already. And that also includes a promise never to raise the cost of living or increase electricity rates for anyone, particularly seniors on fixed incomes. And the reason why I'm making this video today is because my opponent recently put out a video claiming that I voted against a bill that would have allowed Southington residents in particular to benefit from a $150 credit from Eversource due to food spoilage because of power outages. And that's just another false claim in a series of false claims that he has made. It's disappointing since I have never, since I began in politics, done any negative campaigning. But it seems like every election cycle I end up having to set the record straight repeatedly as my opponents try to misrepresent my record, and most recently that I would vote for a bill to hurt diabetes patients. That doesn't even make sense. Why would anyone vote for a bill that hurts people or stand out because of it? The bill in this case that he has mentioned is House Bill 5542. And the first thing I would say he did not mention is that this bill is from 2012. And like a lot of legislation, it has many moving parts. It is true that it would have provided a reimbursement for food spoilage for Eversource customers based on power outages, except that he implied that Southington residents would have been eligible. And that's just not true. Very few people would be eligible. The bill required a means test, limiting it only to a certain demographic of Connecticut residents, and it only applied to folks who had been on food stamps within the last 12 months. And that might have been fine also, except that he failed to mention the most important thing about this bill, and the reason why I voted against it, along with a lot of my Republican colleagues, and that is that this bill would have added yet another hidden tax and surcharge on every electric bill. I would encourage anyone who wants to read the summary for themselves to go to the website. I will share the link on this video, and you can read the summary yourself and you can see the requirements and that it is just another new tax. I want to also remind everyone of what happened back in 2011 after Tropical Storm Irene, and the state offered to reimburse residents who are eligible for food stamps for their losses from spoiled food. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the state expected to receive 3,000 applications and ended up getting 25,000 applications, most of which were approved, and we all paid for that. But of course, there were hundreds of state employees who were caught committing fraud and applying for this benefit. And it made a lot of news over the next 2 years. But in the end, of course, no one was prosecuted, and virtually all of them ended up getting their jobs back after arbitration. That's a big problem and a whole separate issue. But it just shows the problem with this type of policy. Thankfully, my Republican colleagues in the House at the time helped me make such a stink about this bill that it never ran or was voted on in the Senate, and therefore it never became law. Just think of how much extra we would have all paid in our electric bills over the last 8 or 9 years if this had existed. The bottom line is that this bill was designed to establish yet another revenue stream for Democrats in our state government. It's bad policy, and I'm proud to have helped prevent this from becoming law. I don't know if my opponent would have voted for it, but it certainly sounds that way. As far as my record, I'm proud of my record, and particularly on energy. There have been several bills over the years that have moved our state in a dangerous direction, requiring overly aggressive commitments to clean energy and away from fossil fuels, and a lack of attention to storm response and the ability for Eversource to run its business in a way that would actually benefit consumers. I've commented a lot on this recently, and my record is clear. I am in favor of policies that do move us towards clean energy in a responsible and achievable manner while not raising the cost of electricity on anyone. I have voted against all the key bills over the last 8 or 9 years, which have caused the massive increases that we are experiencing now. And I have not only campaigned against those increases and those bills, but I have kept my promises to work hard to prevent them and try and reverse them. And I will do so if I'm reelected. Since my opponent was so concerned with going all the way back to 2012, it's funny that he did not mention Senate Bill 23, which is a bill that did become law. I believe it was passed unanimously, and this was known as the Storm Response Bill that we passed after Hurricane Sandy. Because we had the same kind of thing. We had a lot of people with power outages for long periods of time. Now, that's a bill I voted for. It was designed to improve the requirements on utility companies when responding to storms and power outages that happen in the wake of them. What's interesting is I have been reviewing the provisions in that bill in preparation for the public hearing that is supposed to come up on August 24th that's being held by PURA, which is the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, because they're going to be questioning Eversource and their response. And I want to look at that bill and see if Eversource was living up to its expectations. I don't want to be a typical politician and jump out and say, you know, these people failed and this and that, unless I have the facts in front of me so that I can be responsible and fair. I really hope I don't have to do too many more of these, you know, set the record straight videos over the next several months. I would encourage my opponent, who has really yet to define a clear platform, to tell us where he stands on things. Other than his praise of Ned Lamont's job as governor and his opposition to Southington's Columbus statue, we know very little about where he stands. Would he have voted for any of Governor Malloy or Governor Lamont's huge tax hike budgets? They all passed with virtually unanimous Democrat support year after year. Would he have stood with me against the legislative majority Democrats who have repeatedly damaged our economy, raised our taxes, and driven businesses and jobs from our state? How would he have voted on the recent anti-police bill? Does he support our president and efforts to save American principles of freedom and opportunity? You know where I stand. I'm very clear and open and try and make it very, very obvious to people what I am fighting for every day. I will continue to advocate for policies that make Connecticut a more affordable and attractive place for everyone to live, to raise a family, to start or run a business, and to retire. And I will also continue speaking out against the rise of cancel culture, and I'll work to try and find ways to unite us as Americans, since that is the number one issue facing us today. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for my next installment by video.